What does it mean? What does it mean? Words, 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 words. This perceived prejudice of pop cultural power peeling away to reveal a politically poignant pain. Ideological fallacies as if a dichotomy of binary holds any truth. I see past it, I see further. These words, these labels. Black, white, yellow and brown. Cuck, bigot, woke and assimilate. Filters painted over the mirror of the world. Who does this benefit? All these creations of social imperatives are scrutinized, plucked and pillaged. Just cruelty begetting cruelty. I understand now. I look upon my broken reflection, forlorn in sight, and say to thyself, I see into your soul. I see hatred. You're a parasite born out of envy and jealousy and longing for the lives of others. You feed off them, weak, inferior, and broken.
Part 1. What the fuck was that guy just talking about? Man, my script just fell on the floor. Well, welcome into my mind palace here. This is so weird. Hey guys, welcome into my mind palace. If you're wondering why I'm dressed like a douchebag, it's cause I got a really bad haircut and I don't want anyone seeing it. And as for the glasses, it's cause I just like them, you know, they make me look smart. Yeah. So today, we're gonna be talking about racism. I know what you're thinking. This chair is squeaking and my script fell on the floor. What was it saying? This is why I filmed live action, this is so bad! Today, we're going to be talking about racism, specifically internalized racism. And I know what you're thinking, racism? What are you talking about? Racism doesn't exist. Obama fixed racism years ago.
There are white folks, and then there are ignorant motherfuckers like you.
Jesus Christ, Barack, do you kiss your mother with that mouth? In all seriousness, internalized racism is a very taboo topic and most people don't like to talk about. It's a hard phenomenon to articulate because if you haven't experienced yourself, it's very hard to explain. In my own words, it's a racially motivated inferiority complex, a self-hating psychological defect causing the envy and jealousy of Caucasian identity. Breathe. At first glance, this seems like an individual issue rather than a societal one, but research on the subject claims that the problem is really stemming from societal social imperatives, negative cultural byproducts brought by stereotypes, values, images, ideologies, and the dominant Western culture, stemming from the media and then reiterated by society at large. It's a very insidious and malicious form of racism that not many people like to talk about because it's really hard to identify and most people it's happening to don't really know it's happening to them. Truth be told, it took me a while to understand my own internalized racism and deal with that myself. Most people write this topic off as one of those makeshift buzzwords that oversensitive people use to validate being pissed off at the damn white people. Bloody Jimbo and his flannel shirt. Fuck you, Jimbo. While there are outliers out there who are hysterical and who use this topic of internalized racism and internalized oppression as a get out of jail free card, going forward, I want to preface this video by saying this isn't really about that. To me, there is merit to this discussion and actual scientific theory behind it. If you're a bit skeptical, that's alright, just hear me out to the very end. Part 2. What is it? Well, I've already given my own definition for what internalized racism is, but what do people mean by it when they refer to it in academic circles? To understand and address internalized racism in academic circles, it's important to identify what exactly it isn't. It is important not to confuse internalized racism with other frequently used dysfunctions among people of color. We need to understand internalized racism is simply not low self-esteem, color prejudice, or colorism, stereotyping, or self-hatred. These may be symptoms and byproducts or results of internalized racism, but they're not the thing itself. Alright, so here's some quick history for you. The term internalized racism and internalized oppression That gets me every time. The terms were originally coined by a white lady psychologist called Karen PYKE. She defined internalized racism as involving both conscious and unconscious acceptance of a racial hierarchy, in which Caucasians are constantly ranked above every other ethnic group. Later on, more sociological studies refined this definition of this phenomenon. Internalized racism is a situation that occurs in a racially biased system. When a racial group oppressed by racism supports a supremacy and dominance of the dominating group by maintaining or participating in a set action of attitudes, behaviors, or social structures and ideologies that undergirds the dominating power. It involves several interconnected elements which I'll go through now. As people of colour are victimized by racism, we internalize it. That is, we develop ideas, beliefs, actions, behaviors that conclude with racism. This internalized racism has its own systemic reality with its own negative consequences in the lives and communities of people of colour. More than just consequences of racism, internalized racism is systematic in reaction to racism and has a life of its own. In other words, there is a system in place that is inherently racially biased. Internalized racism is a byproduct of that. Due to internalized racism, people of colour do not have ultimate decision-making power over the decision that controls their lives, resources within Western society. As a result, on a personal level, we may think white people know more about what needs to be done for us than we do ourselves. An example of this would be here on YouTube. A lot of the YouTube political sphere is predominantly, well, white. Don't get me wrong, I still love these creators as much as everyone else, but there is a conversation to be had and being had about the racial predominance of political YouTube. Moving on to the interpersonal level, structurally there is an unspoken system in place that rewards people of colour who support an imposed racially hierarchy and punishes those who don't. Internalized racism is a systematic issue. It must be distinguished from human wounds like self-hatred or having low self-esteem, in which all people in Western society are vulnerable to. Mental illness is on the rise. It is important to understand it is a systematic issue because that makes it clear that it is not a problem simply of an individual. It's structural. It's the society in which we live in. Even people of colour who have high self-esteem, like myself, must wrestle with internalized racism that affects us, our loved ones, our institutions, our communities. Institutionalized racism must be understood as a system to be grappled with. Let me quickly disclaim here, I don't believe the racially biased system in place was made this way deliberately. It just happened to be like this, and we're slowly working to fix it. Let's not go around yelling at white people. Internalized racism negatively impacts people of colour interculturally and cross-culturally because race is a social and political construct that comes out of particular histories of domination and exploitation between peoples, colonialism and all that bad stuff, such as ethnicity and culture, nationality and class are all intertwined in a big jumble of mess, especially when race is confused with nationality and ethnicity. Internalized racism can also exist in different cultural and ethnic groups, pitting us all against each other. I'll give you an example. So, while I am Australian and I identify as Australian, but due to the fact that one of my parents isn't white, some ignorant people would make the assumption that I am un-Australian. With internalized racism, the standards for what is appropriate or considered normal that people of colour accept are white and Eurocentric standards. This may be its beauty, acting, the way you talk, the way you dress. We have a difficult naming, communicating and living up to our deepest standards and values and holding ourselves each other accountable to them. Often, instead, we grab onto standards and set in reaction to abuse of systematic racism. In short, in less academic words, internalized racism is a byproduct brought by Western societal standards and pop cultural influences. I made a video just about the pop cultural influences, sort of about that, if you want to check that out over here. Due to systematic norms, it causes, in some aspects, internalized hatreds of one's own ethnic identity and envy of Caucasian identity. From here, I'm going to give you some examples of the worst aspect of what I perceive as internalized racism. Part 3. This pain. This phantom pain.
To be born a tall white Chad is to win the genetic lottery in life. Life was made for the white man, particularly the good-looking, tall, rich white man. Literally every ethnic had an ancestor serving colonial white masters at one point or another. Most of us, it was our grandfathers or our great-grandfathers being subservient to white men. Imagine having your kids, and the kids learning about their history in school, the fact that their ancestors were slaves to white man, the fact that the apartheid was around till the mid-90s. God, the kids will be traumatized being born with a bad hand in life as a colored man or woman. In circumstances, colored women will try and court the white man, and colored boy will rot in misery watching pornos with white women who will never even get to touch in real life. Ethnics need to stop reproducing, or we will create a generation of incels who will not settle well into Western society. I'm asking all governments in the West if second or third generation invisible minorities really settle into white society. We all know most ISIS members are in fact young ethnic males who felt ostracized by their adopted society. All women naturally prefer winners in life. So far, white people have clearly won by a mile, and hence they will be seen as a trophy for all ethnic women. Any ethnic guy who thinks ethnic women are loyal clearly haven't talked to their mothers or grandmothers about how beautiful white children are. My mother clearly calls white children angels. It never began. Breed.
Jesus fucking Christ. Now we have a rough idea on what exactly internalized racism is. I'm going to give you some examples. I just gave you the one just then, the breed. Jesus fucking Christ, what is wrong with people? In all seriousness, from here we're going to talk about some really gross and violent ways this stuff can manifest, and I really don't want to talk about this. It kind of makes me feel uncomfortable, but we have to. The examples I've been giving previously are from this subreddit called Just Be White. It's a subset of incels who have taken too much of what they call the race pill, a subreddit for the discussion in sexual racism, lookisms, and importance of ethnic background in dating. If you have no knowledge of the red pill or incel culture or what have you, I recommend watching Nat's video on the topic. It's really good, and you probably need an idea of what an incel is. In my opinion, this subreddit is the literal physical manifestation of what I perceive as internalized racism. Ostracized men of color, to no fault of their own, are stuck in this echo chamber, perpetually stuck in this never-ending cycle of internalized hatred and racism towards themselves. It's really sad to look at these people with their constant fixations on life, and they feel themselves as inferior and broken due to their racial makeup, and yeah. Unfortunately, it gets worse. Here's another example for those who don't know who this boy is. Congrats, you're not as fucked up as me. This is Elliot Rodger. Elliot Rodger is the notorious Isla Vista mass shooter. While his motives about his incel murdering rampage has been well documented, not many have talked or identified his massive racist statements and deeply rooted racially motivated self-hatred. Elliot was half Asian, like myself, and blamed his lack of success and everything that was wrong in his life to do with his ethnic background. And that led him to what he did. Now, quoting his manifesto here, on top of what I was feeling, I was different because of my mixed race. I am half white, half Asian, and this made me feel different from the normally fully white kids that I was trying to fit in with. My first act was to ask my parents to allow me to bleach my hair blonde. I always envied and admired blonde-haired people. They always seemed to be so much more beautiful. That's what sociologists would describe as white worship or white envy, and it's a pretty gross and insidious form of racism because it's done to yourself. And yeah, continuing his manifesto,
I came across an Asian guy who was talking to a white girl. The sight of that filled me with rage. I always felt as if the white girls thought of less of me because I was half Asian. But when I see this white girl at a party talking to a full-blooded Asian, I never had that kind of attention from a white girl. And white girls are the only girls I'm attracted to, especially blondes. How could an ugly Asian attract the attention of a white girl, while a beautiful Eurasian like myself never had any attention from them? That was one of the final things that caused Elliot to kill 6 people and injure 14 others. There's nothing funny about that. That's horrible. As much as I'm trying to keep this video from getting dark, the reality of this conversation is it can lead to some people doing the most horrible and heinous things humanity is capable of doing. Elliot killed people and then killed himself. A lot of people will think these are just rare outliers and most people can just get on with their day, and yeah, while I agree with that and that's what I hopefully want everyone to do, it can affect about basically anyone. Look, it affected someone like Michael Jackson. As problematic as that guy was, he was fairly content with his life as well. So I could keep listing off examples, but this is making me way too sad. So yeah. Part 4. Let's get sad.
Scene 1, take 37. I don't need to do this, I'm just doing this because fucking I'm trying to act professional. Why don't you fucking take this red pill and just... It's very hard for this topic to get taken seriously. The usual response is just, sensitive people, fucking stand up straight with your shoulders back, clean your room and get on with your life. But I feel like there is real world precedent behind this and there is academic theory behind this. So to cap this all off, I'm just going to talk about my own experiences. And I'm just going to go off script here. My script just fell down, that's awesome. So, yeah, for a while I grappled a lot with internalized racism. I particularly didn't like myself due to my mixed race heritage, and I thought of myself as inferior and worst of people, but it was weird to articulate because being half white I would always consider myself better than full colored people when that, and that's like a horrible way of thinking. And I did a lot of, I also, as much as I joke about the whole breed with white women, I did sort of think like that, and it's pretty weird and gross to think like that. It's very much like, I would say to myself like, oh, I would never ever date anyone who isn't white, or only the white women for me, and I'll justify it to myself. I'll say shit like, oh, it's just a preference, it's not like racist or any shit, but it's pretty bigoted, and it's that sort of mentality is not something that will make you happy in life. Much like Elliot, I did dye my hair a lot. There are shitty photos of me out there with fucking just munted ass looking hair. So I used to dye my hair to make myself look more white, and I'll do a whole bunch of other things, and it's quite, you feel shit at the end of the day. You feel like at times living in the West as a person of colour, and I'm just saying this in my own experience, I'm not saying this applies to everyone, at times living in the West as a person of colour, it feels like I either have two options really. I either have to be assimilated or I have to be exterminated. And while I don't actually believe that's true, there's a lot of malicious precedent for that. And yeah, people who are suffering from internalized racism, it's hard. It's not a lifestyle to be happy, thinking with this racially motivated, racially biased hierarchy. It's fucking denial. And obviously I'm not an expert on the topic. I have spent a lot of time researching, looking up papers and what have you. And all I can offer is that I've experienced it firsthand. And I know what it's like to feel like shit because of just the colour of my skin. Even though I'm fairly pale, I'm not considered white. So, yeah. So I'm just hoping with this video I can just create more discussion and awareness on this topic. And I'm going to leave a ton of links below so you guys can read up on the topic for yourself with a bit more of a nuanced perspective, because this is just, you know, it's me, I'm a fucking idiot. I'm some dickhead with a YouTube channel, you know, I don't matter. And, you know, internalized racism it's shit. Like, it's just, to put it bluntly, like, fucking sucks. Like, no one wants to feel like they're worthless because of who they are. So, to cap this off, all I can really say is, no matter what anyone says, even what those close to you say, no matter how hard society and culture just tries to shove it down your throat, you don't have to believe in some way or another that you are inferior because of who you are and something you can't change.
I got a lot on my mind, you got a lot on yours, but we can run like the wind, baby. Go lock the door. You know we
Hey everybody, whoa, welcome to the end of the video. Props if you managed to sit that through. And yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah, so this was basically my shitty attempt at an Aussie ContraPoints Peter Coffin philosophy tube ripoff, if you couldn't tell. Speaking of Peter, massive thanks to Peter and also Angie and everyone else who is in this whole new movement sort of thing, and everyone else who has come over, who subbed recently. Yeah, we just hit 1k and that's really cool. I used to when I wasn't doing YouTube, I used to scoff at channels who only had 1,000 subscribers, because that's a measly amount compared to most people on YouTube. But it's quite different from looking at it from this perspective, because it's a lot different what numbers of the YouTube subs mean to you when you're on this side and you're actually creating stuff. So yeah, so you know, it's not a lot, but yeah, it's pretty cool, and I'm happy I've hit this milestone. Yeah, so my peace. Let's build a better society. I don't know. I'm not very good at going off script. What else do I have to say? That's about it.